You're handling the situation with Jimmy.
Jimmy's my brother, and that's it's ride or die, man.
One of the things that I did ask Brian McLeod to do was I asked him to bring Fletcher or Yayo to me. So took it upon himself and he killed Well Fletcher.
Everybody rap. We don't rap. We rap to make money. We do business. Ain't no other record company out there that sold as many records as we did. We outsold Bad Boy, LaFaze, every black record label out there. We outsold them in 1 year.
Yo, what it is, people, we is back. Another day on Keep It G News. And today we talking about Jimmy Henchman, man. So, most people is familiar with Jimmy Henchman, you know, especially if you from early 2000s, if you was around hip-hop and you was old enough to know what was going on, you know the story. Got into it with 50 Cent, you know. Had a beef supposed to be with Pac. They blamed him for this so-called hit on Pac that Haitian Jack supposed to carried out. People know the story. But what people don't know is, well, I didn't know, and I don't think most people was aware of this, that Jimmy Henchman has a brother. And his brother was in on this indictment. Now, Jimmy Henchman currently right now is locked up on 2 life sentences. Still claiming his innocence. You know, it was a murder for hire type thing, drug trafficking. Wow, you know, typically it's not something you see from somebody so high up in the music level. You know, because he had major artists. Brandy, Salt and Pepper. You know, back then, these was chart-topping artists. Then it all came crashing down. But what leads me today is his brother, like I said, he had a brother. Was in on this indictment. Never spoke out about it. Most people didn't even know he existed because he played the background. And in this video, you're going to hear why he played the background. Then you're going to hear about how he got away from him. Was on a run for the feds, man. 10 years before he got caught. And in this article I'm ready to read for y'all, he going to detail the whole time in 8 years that Mario Rosemond heard his name. It filled him with terror. Almost as much as the men surrounding him with machine guns. It was March 2019, and the Rosemans was living in Mexico under an assumed identity. Born in Haiti and tossed out of the streets of Brooklyn as a teenager. He was on a run from the FBI for his role in a cocaine trafficking empire ran by his younger brother, Jimmy. But the Roseman brothers were no ordinary hustlers. As founders of Henchman Entertainment, rap's most notorious management firm, Jimmy and Mario had made millions the legit way, by deftly cultivating artists such as The Game, Salt and Pepper, Akon, Sean Kingston, and Gucci Mane. During their meteoric rise in the 1990s, Mario had kept a low profile. The Wall Street trained numbers guy who quietly managed the company's fortunes, Jimmy, 5 years younger, served as Henchman's flashy and intimidating frontman. The self-described gangster manager of hip-hop, they figured out how to go from the streets to boardrooms, says Ski, one of rap's most influential producers and DJs. They have that respect. But according to the feds, Jimmy never left the streets at all. Roseman styled himself a hip-hop mogul, bringing the music of the streets to a wider audience and expanding opportunities of artists. As the Justice Department puts it, in reality, his image as a music impresario was a cover for the real Jimmy Roseman, a thug in a suit, who flooded those same streets with cocaine and shuttered drugs and money from coast to coast. Arrested in 2011, Jimmy was convicted of running a massive drug empire and of ordering the murder of Lowell Lodi Mac Fletcher, an associate of 50 Cent, who was gunned down in the Bronx. Some in the rap world also suspected him of masterminding the 1994 shooting of Tupac Shakur at Quad Studios, igniting the bi-coastal rap feud that led to the murders of both Tupac and Biggie Smalls. Now serving 2 life sentences in federal prison, Jimmy continues to maintain his innocence, claiming he served as the fall guy for the drugs and the violence that plagued the music industry. That dark force that we grew up on, that Joker character, that nemesis of good. He tells me in a recent call from prison, unfortunately, I became that in the music business, and to reporters, and eventually to prosecutors who felt they needed to rid the business of me. It was Jimmy's arrest that drove Mario to flee to Mexico. Faced with having to testify against his brother, Roseman pulled a Saul Goodman. He paid $50,000 to be smuggled down to Cuernavaca, where he adopted a new identity. Tommy Davis, leaving behind his family and friends. He spent 8 years living with my head on a swivel, as Mario puts it, always on the lookout for anyone who might recognize him. He kept a low profile. He learned Spanish, stayed clear of serious relationships, and went to church on Sundays. You're not trusting nobody, he says. It didn't help that Cuernavaca had become a battleground, with one of Mexico's fiercest cartels erupting in an internal war. Driving to the gym, Roseman would pass the corpse of a freshly butchered gangster on the side of the road, a friend he knew who got shot dead by the cartel, and his roommate, a steroid Jack Colombian, had been kidnapped for 3 days before managing to escape. It was a dangerous place to live on the lam. The moment Roseman's past caught up with him, he felt nightmarishly surreal. He was doing his laundry in the courtyard of his apartment building when he spotted 5 armed men climbing the fence. "We're looking for Mario," one of them told English. "You no see," Mario stammered in Spanish. "Mi nombre es Tommy Davis." Then they threw a bag over his head and everything went dark. Today, 4 years later, Roseman's life still hangs in the balance. It's kind of hard even speaking on it right now, he tells me, because I don't know what the end game is. We're talking over breakfast at a Friendly's near Rahway, New Jersey, a universe away from Roseman's takedown in Cuernavaca. At age 64, dressed in blue jeans and a blue polo, he comes across as less urban gangster than suburban granddad. It's the status he has earned by spending his days babysitting his 2-year-old grandson. The only sign of his hip-hop past are the tattoos on his right arm, memorializing his late mother and sister. Whatever choice he made in his life, he said it was his family that drove him. "I don't have too many people in my circle," he says. "It's family." Now, as he awaits sentencing for participating in a conspiracy to distribute cocaine, he's sharing his incredible saga for the first time. From his meteoric rise in Brooklyn to his inglamorous fall in Mexico. Mario's working-class parents migrated from Port-au-Prince in New York City, where he was 7. Constantine was a carpenter. Andrea got work as a nurse. Like every immigrant family, Mario says, they wanted a better life. The family settled in the Vanderveer Estates, a housing project of 59 rundown buildings that sprawled across 30 acres of East Flatbush. Quiet and intellectual, Mario tried to provide an example for his 8 younger siblings, especially Jimmy, but their home life was troubled. Constantine, an abusive womanizer, would beat us with anything and everything, Mario recalls. At age 16, Mario stepped in to stop his father from assaulting his mother. Constantine told him there wasn't room for 2 grown men in the house and threw him out. "My parents worked hard to keep us out of the streets," Mario says. "And you know, the streets always come and get you." Mario tried street life himself, joining a gang of petty thieves called the Jolly Stompers. But after a high school guidance counselor helped him secure a Wall Street internship, Mario learned how to build a fortune the old-fashioned way, legal money, not having to worry, he says. "I learned how people really got rich, the masters of the universe." He realized did it by keeping a low profile. "When you're in the background, nobody knows about you," he says. "They don't know that you're actually running things. They don't know that you're watching everything." But while Mario worked to ascend the ranks of Wall Street and start a family of his own, Jimmy remained behind in Brooklyn, where he hung out in the projects with his father out of the picture and his mother working 2 jobs. Jimmy had to fend for himself. He tells me, "I had no guardianship, so the streets is what adopted me." At 10, he fell in with local Jamaican gang called the Untouchables. At 13, he owned his first gun. At 18, he landed in Rikers Island on a firearms charge. Jimmy considered Rikers gladiator school. He studied the Black Panthers, converted to Islam, and learned his trade from the city's most experienced drug dealers. "Despite everything that, I know better," he says. "This is the only family I had." Jimmy worked his way up to become, as he later boasted, the biggest drug dealer in Brooklyn. In 1992, after cops busted down his door looking for drugs, Jimmy approached his brother Mario with a proposition. "Let's start a music management company." For Jimmy, as he later puts it, music was a way to create a hideout for his drug money. "I didn't know anything about the music business," he said. "I didn't care about the music business, but one of the fascinations of being a gangster or a drug dealer is that you want to rub shoulders with guys who have money, or guys of your stature, and you look at entertainment as those guys." Jimmy was hitting up his brother at a vulnerable moment. Mario was just out of Rikers himself, where he was sentenced to spend every weekend for 18 months for, unwittingly, he claims, cashing stolen checks for a friend. Out of a job and unemployed on Wall Street with a younger daughter to support, Mario was a sharp enough businessman to spot an opportunity. Plus, he loved music, and he had been DJing at the clubs under the name Mr. Slick. With the popularity of a rap on the rise, emerging artists and producers needed someone to represent them, someone who can navigate the treacherous waters of the music business. Together, all the top talent in one place, Jimmy and Mario organized a conference called How Can I Be Down? Held in Miami Beach in 1992. The event attracted a who's who of hip-hop early moguls: Russell Simmons, Benny Medina, Leo Corleone, Chris Lighty, Mona Scott. While Jimmy worked the crowd, Mario practiced the skill that he had learned on Wall Street. I was just a fly on the wall, so no one really pays me any attention, he recalls. As opposed to my brother, he wanted to be a front man. That's why in the music business we worked out so well. Therefore, the brothers proved their prowess by engineering one of the biggest hip-hop songs of the year, Salt and Pepper. The pioneer female rap trio from New York were on their fourth record and in need of a hit when Jimmy hooked up with Mark Sparks, a producer friend. Jimmy had zero experience in music, but it didn't matter. I was young enough to where I trusted my ears, he tells me. Released in September 1993, the resulting single, Shoot, became a runway hit, topping the rap charts and going gold in only 2 months. The brothers quickly moved up with another hit by the R&B duo Groove Theory. The band co-founder Bryce Wilson remembers Jimmy as a small geek guy in glasses. He didn't represent himself as a gangster. Jimmy was a nerd, Wilson tells me, but he was extremely loyal and extremely unselfish and would do whatever it takes to make things happen. He was also a canny businessman. Jimmy hit on a groundbreaking idea. He and Mario would sign rap producers instead of artists and make them stars in their own right. What I understood was the real estate of music, Jimmy says. Everything else you're selling in music is intangible, but the publishing. All they needed for their management company was a name. Jimmy wanted something that invoked his personal history, his move from Rikers to rap. He was bringing the streets into the music business, Mario said. The kid fought his way out of the projects, rebranding himself as Jimmy Henchman, and he dubbed their new enterprise Henchman Entertainment. Jimmy and Mario have a lot in common: intelligence, loyalty to those who deserve it, no time for those who don't. They also share a way of speaking, punctuating their comments with their occasional as if preaching to themselves, a leaping call in response. When I asked Jimmy what he learned from the streets that he took to the music business, the convicted drug dealer delivers a gospel of integrity. If you're known to be a thief, that's how they're going to deal with you, he tells me. If you're known to be trustworthy, they get to trust in you more. So he applied it the same way in the music business. People buy into the person. With Jimmy as a public-facing godfather, and Mario the calculating consigliere, the brothers styled themselves as hip-hop Corleones. Adopting the name Henchman not only boosted Jimmy's reputation, but also helped him dodge the cops who were after him on gun charges. They don't know where he is, Mario recalls, because he's Jimmy Henchman now. The company's 15 or so employees also used the Henchman name, even printed it on their business cards. Muhammad Tef Stewart, a friend from Brooklyn who joined the team, became Tef Henchman, a title he wore with the same pride he took in Jimmy. Henchman was his name. He later testified, and it felt like we were under him. The new moniker helped them get into clubs, score meetings, and ward off trouble. It was like a free pass, Mario says, because everybody knew we had the muscle. Only one member of the crew refused to use the new handle, Mario. I didn't want no part of that name, he tells me. He had a motivation for playing it safe. He wanted to protect his 12-year-old daughter, who was living with his ex-wife in New Jersey. But on November 30th, 1994, the Henchman name became etched into history of hip-hop. Jimmy had agreed to pay $15,000 to have the industry hottest rapper, Tupac Shakur, stopped by Quad Studios in New York and record a track with the Henchman artist Little Sean. Mario had known Tupac since the 80s and felt the kinship with the introspective young artist. He was down to earth, a quiet dude, Mario says. He didn't even have any bodyguards. He would be by himself. He was a regular kid. That night, Mario recalls, he was back at Henchman headquarters, opting for the quietude of the office over the scene at the studio. Then his phone rang. It was Jimmy, sounding agitated. Tupac was late, and with the rap star Puffy and Biggie Smalls milling around the studio, Jimmy was losing not only time and money, but something even more dangerous: face. Jimmy wanted Mario to track down his old friend and get him in the studio. Mario called Tupac. Yo, dude, where you at? He asked. Pac said he was uptown making drops with a DJ, but promised to show up for the studio gig. I'm gonna be there, man, he promised Mario. A few hours later, Mario got another, more alarming call from his brother. Yo, Jimmy said, Pac just got shot. Suspicions immediately fell on the Henchman brothers. Tupac manager Freddie Moore called Mario and accused him and Jimmy of setting Tupac up. Yo, somebody shot my man 5 times. Y'all guys didn't know about it? Moore shouted. Dude, do me a favor and think about this, Mario replied. Cause me, I started trying to think logic. If we wanted him dead, or if we wanted to hurt him, wouldn't we have done the record first? If he's dead, that would have been the last song, you know? My artists would be blowing the F up. The police found no evidence linking Jimmy to Tupac's shooting, which ignited a deadly war between the East and West Coast branches of rap. And Jimmy continues to claim against all evidence that Tupac accidentally shot himself with his own gun. I look guilty as F to anybody who's standing around, right? Jimmy tells me. But this guy never was shot up. He shot himself, still. With the police looking for him on gun charges, Jimmy wasn't taking any chances. As Tupac lay bleeding on the lobby of the studio, Jimmy slipped away. Mario is cagier about Jimmy's involvement in the shooting. If he did do that, he tells me, that would have been stupid. When I asked Mario if he thinks Jimmy is innocent, he laughs. I didn't say he's innocent, he says. I'm saying I believe he's innocent. Not long after the Tupac shooting, Mario was at his home in Plainfield, New Jersey, when the police came crashing through the door, guns drawn. They were looking for Jimmy, avoiding drama in what had driven Marlo from Brooklyn in the first place, but the streets had followed him to the suburbs. Luckily, his daughter wasn't there to see the cops raid his home, looking for her uncle. The experience left Mario more resolved than ever to stay out of his brother's affairs. From that experience, I stay squeaky clean, he insists, cause that would put my daughter and my family in danger. In the rap community, Tupac's shooting only served to burnish Jimmy's reputation, especially after Pac recorded the diss track Against All Laws, vowing to pay back Jimmy Henchman in due time. Jimmy was thrilled. He put me in that record, he says. That's what gave me notoriety. But Marlo was far from pleased. It made Jimmy more famous, and for him, he loves that, right? For me, I hate it because now it brings more light to you. With this gun charge still looming, Jimmy began working out of his car to evade the police. Mario was in the office, so I was able to move around, he says, with more clients, more hits, and more money pouring in. The brothers made themselves indispensable to those around them. Flush with cash, we was able to do things for folks, Mario says. With their reputation growing, they began attracting more and more top stars, from Brandy to Junior Mafia. They make deals, settle beefs, lend money with interest. When I asked Mario what happened when someone didn't make a payment, he dismissed the idea as unthinkable. Everybody always did, he says. But Jimmy could only run for so long. In 1996, he was arrested in Los Angeles and sent to prison. Mario kept Henchman running while Jimmy was behind bars, but by the time his brother got released 3 years later, he felt increasingly concerned. It was hot up here, he says. My brother, some of the moves he was making at that time, I didn't necessarily agree. Now, more so than ever, the streets is definitely in the office. To protect his family, he decided to put some distance between himself and his brother. I'm going to go to the West Coast, he told Jimmy, and I'm going to start my own thing. In 2001, at the age of 43, Mario moved to Los Angeles and built a new life far from his troubles back home. He started an adult film company called Joyride. It was just a business thing. Bought a house in Hollywood Hills and started a new family. For a guy who always wanted to live the quiet life, it felt as if he had finally found some peace. But back in New York, Jimmy didn't stray far from the streets. Through his management company, now called Caesar Entertainment, he continued to manage top artists. He brokered a boxing match between Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis. That became the highest grossing bout in history, with over $100 million in revenue. He even branched out into politics, holding a free concert in Haiti with Wyclef Jean and Akon to raise awareness about the country's plight. But the generosity came with a price. Jimmy was always there for the people, says Garland Ghetto Cyrus, who ran Caesar record distribution in the South. He was just a guy that you couldn't cross. Jimmy's tough guy approach to the music industry erupted in open violence when he signed one of the biggest artists, The Game, a member of G-Unit, the pioneer of hip-hop group that included a young 50 Cent. The Game had ties to Volatile Records, a rival music company whose offices happened to be directly across from Caesar's on the 25th Street. Violator had a powerhouse roster including Mariah Carey, LL Cool J, and Missy Elliott, and it didn't take the game defection lightly. In February 2005, when 50 Cent went on Hot 97 Radio to throw the game out of his group and dismiss him as gone, an outraged Jimmy dispatched the game and a henchman soldiers, Tough Stewart, to the station with a small crew, according to Stewart. When they arrived, they were greeted with gunshots. The two sides clashed again in the following year at the annual Mixtape Awards at the Apollo Theater in Harlem. As Jimmy fled the scene, one of his soldiers shot up a white Bentley belonging to a member of G-Unit. Then, in March 2007, a G-Unit associate named Lodi Mac Fletcher took the feud too far. As he was leaving Violator office, Fletcher spotted a 14-year-old boy wearing a Caesar sweatshirt outside Jimmy's office. Racing across the street, he pushed the kid against a wall, slapped him, and threatened him with a gun. That boy turned out to be Jimmy Roseman Jr. When he got the news, Jimmy Sr. was enraged. "I just couldn't believe somebody would do that," he tells me. "The kid was only 14, and he looked like he was 12. Then I found out it was these clowns. They crossed the line with my son." After Mario learned what had happened, he urged Jimmy to stay cool. "I passed the word that he needed to chill out," he recalls. "I told him revenge is best served when it's cold." Fletcher was sent to prison for assault and endangering a child, but that didn't satisfy Jimmy. War broke out on the streets of New York. Tough Stewart's barbershop was burned down. The henchman suspected a G-Unit associate. Stewart later testified that he and others in Jimmy's crew bombed the associate's bulletproof truck with Molotov cocktails. Then, in 2009, Fletcher was released from prison for assault on Jimmy's son. 2 weeks later, as he stepped off a train in the Bronx, someone burst out of the shadows and gunned him down, shooting him 5 times in the back with a .22 caliber handgun. The feud over Jimmy's music business had turned fatal. "I need you to help me," Jimmy told Mario. It was the spring of 2011, and Jimmy had called his big brother in distress. By then, Jimmy was allegedly the biggest drug trafficker in the music business, with a dozen underlings at his command. He ran what feds later called a large bi-coastal narcotics trafficking organization, moving thousands of pounds of coke. Now the lieutenant who ran the operation, Khalil Abdullah, had been arrested, and Jimmy wanted Mario to make sure a payment coming got handled. "He could only trust me," Mario says, "because money, lots of money, is coming down." Caesar Entertainment had become both a nexus and a cover-up for a trafficking enterprise. Cocaine would be wrapped in plastic, slathered in mustard, packed in musical equipment boxes, and sent from Los Angeles to a rehearsal studio in New York. Once the drugs were retrieved, the entertainment boxes would be sent back to LA, reloaded with millions in cash. Jimmy and his henchmen used burner phones, encrypting their messages and emails. With so many artists coming and going on various projects, no one was the wiser as the contraband-filled road cases shipped through Interscope Records, the label co-founded by music legend Jimmy.WAS. Interscope denied any involvement in the drug enterprise. Until now, Mario had determinedly stayed out of Jimmy's underworld. He was remaking his life in LA, and he wanted nothing to do with the streets he had left behind. But there was one problem with Mario: he'll do whatever for his family and for his people, says his friend DJ Ski. He's extremely loyal to a fault, so when Jimmy asked him for help, Mario couldn't say no. That's how he got back in, he tells me. He made sure the drug money got to where it was shipped to get, he says. But the brotherly favor put Marlo on the crosshairs. A few months later, he got a late-night call from a neighbor, the only other black guy who lived in the ritzy Hollywood Hills development. The feds had busted down the guy's door by mistake looking for Mario. It was only a matter of time before Mario found himself in custody. And that meant, as he saw it, there was only one choice. He called up a loyal contact in a henchman's network. "They bust down my door, man, looking for me," Mario told him. "What do you have in your trick bag?" "We're going to need 50 grand, the guy replied. "I'll go to Mexico and set it up for you." The guy said he would spread the money throughout a decentralized network of people who could smuggle Mario across the border. In the meantime, Mario couldn't go home. This place didn't exist anymore, the guy told him. Another handler packed him up and took him to a hotel, the first of 3 he'd be staying at over the next few days until he can get him to Mexico. From this moment forward, Mario was on the run, just as Jimmy had been for years. To get his phony identity, Mario slipped an envelope containing $5,000 in cash to a contact at the Department of Motor Vehicles. When his new ID was ready, the contact called him from a burner phone and told him what day to come by to the DMV. When Mario arrived, he sneaked around in line until the contact lit his red light, signaling him to come over. That's when Mario was handed an authentic California driver's license with his new identity, Tommy Davis. When I was asked how he felt about the random name he was given, Mario chuckled. "Didn't make no difference to me," he says. Once he was over the border, however, Mario would lose what mattered to him most, his family. It would be too risky to speak with them again. He called his elder daughter back in New Jersey to say goodbye. She was in her 30s with a family of her own. "I'm in trouble," he told her. "I gotta get out of here." All he could do was listen to her cry and explain that he didn't know when he'd be back. Then he told his two little kids in Los Angeles, "Daddy's sorry, but he gotta take care of something," he said. "It's just like when I go out and travel for business, so you're not gonna see me for a little while." He ate his last meal at Crust Station in Beverly Hills, ordering his favorites, crabs, garlic noodles, and a mango lobster appetizer. The next morning, he got instructions to go to a nearby supermarket where a black Suburban would be waiting to pick him up. He took one duffel bag of clothes and another filled with $50,000 in cash, enough, he hoped, to last him wherever he was going in Mexico. During the drive south, Mario called Jimmy on his burner phone. They had to be vague, since the feds could be listening. "Yo, dude," Mario said. "Man, you should really make this move with me." "Jimmy?" "I can't go with you," Jimmy replied, "because the two of us together is going to bring too much heat." But he too had an escape plan. "I was working on something," he said. "Based what I'm working on, maybe someday I'll be able to come and see you." Mario's driver zipped them through the border patrol at San Isidro without Mario needing to show his ID, then handed him off in Tijuana to his next liaison, who checked him in at a hotel. "Be at the airport at 8 a.m., the man told him. Once there, Mario went to the specific counter, where the attendant, who was on the take, issued him a ticket under his Tommy Davis alias. His destination, Mexico City. Mario's mouth went dry. He didn't speak Spanish, didn't know a soul in Mexico, and had no clue where he'd be sent. "I was thirsty because I was nervous," he said. "I'm like, what am I walking into? Because I don't know nothing. But I trusted my man, you know. I trusted him with my life. I don't have a choice." After arriving in Mexico City, Mario called the number he'd been given. An authentic Colombian guy pulled up outside with his Mexican fiancée in the passenger seat. "Welcome to Mexico City, man," he told Mario with a smile. The Colombian had been on the run from trouble in San Diego for 15 years. Mario didn't ask why, and the guy didn't inquire about Mario's predicament. They drove 50 miles south until they came to the hillside town of Cuernavaca, and the apartment Mario would share with the couple. From there, he was on his own. As he adjusted to his new life in Mexico, Mario went to an internet cafe each day, checking the news from back home. On June 21st, 2011, scanning the New York Post, he saw a headline: "Fugitive hip-hop agent Rosemont charged with running a drug ring." The story was accompanied by a photo of Jimmy in handcuffs, escorted by two agents from the DEA. They had busted him on his way out of the W Hotel in Manhattan. The complaint, which mapped Jimmy's vast tracking network, revealed that he had been brought down in part by two DEA informants in his organization. One was a longtime friend, Tuffy Stewart. The other was his top lieutenant, Khalil Abdullah. The news got worse. The next day, Jimmy was indicted on even more serious charges, murder for hire. The feds accused him of recruiting a crew of hitmen to kill Fletcher in return for $30,000 of cocaine. When I asked Mario whether he considered Jimmy capable of murder, he dodges the question. But he isn't shy about disparaging how the killing was handled. "It sounded like some Keystone Cop of stupid," he goes on. "It wasn't planned out properly. Like I said, justice is best served when cold." He doesn't seem bothered by the murder, which he takes as given. Everybody knew somebody was going to get dead. It's the sloppiness that irritates him. "I'm always calculated about things," he says. With Jimmy behind bars, Mario felt even more in danger of getting busted or killed. Living on a run in Cuernavaca, he calculated his every step. Rule number 1, stay off the phones. If I had to make a call, he made a call from a booth at a local convenience store. Rule number 2, change apartments every 6 months. I was never attached to anything, he says. This included girlfriends. As one of the few black men in Connecticut, he says, he attracted more than his share of attention from the Mexican women. I was exotic to them, he tells me with a laugh, but he could never risk being himself. You can't have a meaningful relationship with anybody, he says. But as the years passed, the dream of returning home slipped away. He would make a quick call now and then to let his family know he was still alive, but he couldn't let them know anything about his location or situation. His $50,000 was dwindling. He didn't have a way to drum up more money, so he worked out twice a day and went to church to pray and hope for something to change. Then one day, 8 years on the run, something did. Mario, normally so careful and meticulous, acknowledged that he had gotten sloppy. Tired of his life as Tommy Davis, along in Cuernavaca, he started calling home more often and took fewer precautions to cover his tracks. I got lazy, he says. At first, as he was in the courtyard doing his laundry, he thought the man he spotted scaling the fence was Mexican federales. He tried to play it cool when they confronted him, but they ordered him to lie face down on the ground and pointed their weapons at him, frickling with the red laser dots. Oh my God, he thought, I'm going to die today. They're going to kill me. Oh my God, he thought, I'm going to die today. They're going to kill me. It was only after a long silent ride in the back of a pickup truck when his hood was removed, and he found himself staring into the eyes of U.S. Marshals at the Mexican City airport. He still doesn't know who ratted him out. Mario was headed back to New York to face the drug trafficking charges he evaded for nearly a decade, but he felt as though his arrest had actually released him from the prison of his assumed identity. Tommy Davis was no more. All that remained by Roseman. It was a relief, he says, because no matter what anyone says, a double life is the most difficult thing to keep. After his arrest, Mario spent a year in federal prison in New York before he was released to live with his daughter family in New Jersey, where he's now awaiting sentencing. He will plead guilty to one count of conspiracy to distribute cocaine, which could send him away for 5 years to life. But Mario, who spends his days taking care of his grandson, isn't running anymore. I'm at peace now, he tells me, outside of his daughter's home. I'm ready to pay for the bad deeds I did and then go on with my life. One of the reasons he's sharing this story with me, he says, is to discourage others from following his path. Dealing with any kind of illegalities ain't worth it, he says. I had all the money that I could possibly have. Right. No matter how smart you think you are, the government has enough people on their payroll to outsmart you. And it can go on for a month, or it can take years, like for me. But sooner or later, it catches up to you. So I would like to tell the younger generation coming up to try to do it in a different way. While Mario awaits his sentencing, Jimmy is trying to get free with the help of an unlikely ally, Donald Trump. In 2020, a month before Trump left office, Jimmy enlisted celebrity friends, including the actor Michael K. Williams and the NFL legend Jim Brown, to try to secure a presidential pardon. During a call with Jim Brown on December 18, 2020, according to affidavits filed by Jimmy's attorney, Trump told his staff, "Let's get this guy home for Christmas." Last August, a federal judge ruled that Trump's vague comments did not constitute clemency. Jimmy is now hoping Trump will win re-election in 2024 so he can make good on his remarks. My hope is that a guy like Trump will be in charge, Jimmy says. People have this misconception about Trump, especially in the black community. In the meantime, Jimmy's legacy as a music mogul lives on. 14 years after the murder that landed his father in prison, James Roseman Jr. is now a manager himself, representing one of the top artists in hip-hop, Ice Spice. It feels like some sort of redemption, Jimmy said. I'm able to rest a little better at night because he's doing so well. Both Jimmy and Mario tell me their bond is tight as ever. I'd ride or die for him, Mario says. When he was extradited from Mexico, he and his brother spoke by phone for the first time in years. Jimmy, who isn't known for accepting responsibility for his action, offered his older brother an apology. "Sorry, I got you into this, man," Jimmy told him. Mario was having none of it. They'd been through too much. Two immigrant kids from a broken home who grew up in the projects clawed their way out of the top of the music industry and helped transform hip-hop into one of the most influential and lucrative art forms in the world. Above all, they were brothers, and brothers stick together to the end. "It's all good, man," Mario told Jimmy. "What am I going to tell him?" he says now. "Yup, it's all good." Man, make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by October. We're running out of time. I'm about 700 and some change away. I know we can pull it off. You know what I mean? But I want to know how y'all feel about this story, man. How do y'all feel about this whole situation? You know? Because Mario Roseman really wasn't in the game. You know, he was on the music side of it. He wasn't really involved in the criminal aspect of Jimmy Henchman or Henchman Entertainment. But when his brother came to calling, he couldn't turn him down. Even though he knew it was getting out of control, he tried to separate his family from him. Actually moved from New York to California. It just so happened that's where the play was at. You know? It just had, that's where the plug is at. You know, that's where allegedly the drugs is coming from. And Jimmy Henchman thought his brother was the only one he could trust. Then how y'all feel about him going on a run, man? And I always say this, yo, it's always better to turn yourself in, you know, because you can take him on a run, but very few get away forever, you know? I know a guy in my city, Free Milk, YGG Milk, took him on a run, 2 years, was in Puerto Rico. The whole city saluted him, you know, because I ain't never seen nothing like that, especially on the street level. I ain't talking about no super major play. We just talking about a street guy who took the feds on a run. And it worked out for him. Caught less time than all other TTG members. You know what I mean? Including YGGT. But for this man, Mario Roseman, to be facing 5 to life at 64 years old, it's almost like anything over 10 years is a life sentence. And it would have just been better for him to get it over with back then. And that's why I think he was talking about he felt like he was in prison. Even though he was away, even though he was alive and well, having his time in Mexico. He was in prison because he couldn't be himself, he couldn't be around his family. And now he back in the United States, waiting to get sentenced. He probably feeling the best he ever felt. Well, at least in the last 10 years, 15 years. Got his family around him, you know. Even though he got this prison bit laying over his head. He at the finish line now. Well, at least he know soon, you know, what he gonna be dealt with. You know, he gotta play the cards he dealt. But I wanna know how y'all feel about it in the comments. How many of y'all even knew about Mario Roseman? It looked like he never wanted parts of the henchman thing, man. He liked the money. Great business idea. But once it started getting dangerous, that wasn't his lifestyles. That was Jimmy's, allegedly. Then how y'all feel about Jimmy Henchman, man? Was he wrong for even putting his brother in that situation? I don't think I would have did that to my brother, man. Even if it was that type of situation, he was all I could trust, man. Knowing, because I'm sure he knew. He knew that man ain't moved from New York to California for no reason. He was trying to get away. But it's glad to see that after all of that, they still together. They still love each other. They still brothers. And Jimmy Henchman actually accepted his responsibility and realized he was wrong for putting his brother in there. But let me know how y'all feel about it in the comments. Like I said, this is Keep It G News, and I'm out.
Nigga can't do what I do, y'all niggas can't copy me. Let's keep shit G. Let's keep shit G. Let's keep the shit G. Let's keep shit G. Let's keep shit G.